Greetings. I'm going to try something a little bit different because I know the sound from my laptop isn't quite coming through. So I'm doing this on my phone because I think it's the device I have at home that will best translate sound. Let us know as we continue to experiment with different ways to communicate visually and with audio. Today's story I'm going to talk about is the story of Lazarus and his resurrection. There's two elements to this story, and I love this story. There's two elements. There's both the miracle element and the deep symbology archetype element. And I don't think the two are separate. I think they need to go hand in hand, and they do. I've struggled with this story for quite some time, but I have come to a place where I now have faith that this could actually happen, and that the power of the God that exists in us, around us, that we exist in, can change cellular decay, can heal tissue. That relationship is so wide and deep and profound and mysterious that we don't know that it can't. And the miracle stories of John address healing of this kind throughout. And there's always some incredible thing that happens to another being, and they are restored to life after disease, close death, deep mental illness, and now death itself. I believe the science and the spirituality exists to restore cellular decay. I studied at St. Thomas University in New Brunswick, and I took a course through gerontology on the near-death experience community, and it's quite vast. A lot of people have died and then come back to this world to continue this journey. And they all have a very common story in that what they experience was with a oneness, a peace, a completeness. And they were able to translate that back into their livingness. And it changed the way they related to life and others and all creation, and that peace maintained itself, and they were centered in something that was almost indescribable, but so much now inside them, as if it had already been there, and then it got activated. And I am someone who believes that this is just one part of our soul's journey here on planet Earth. And when we leave here through death, we go somewhere else, and we could become a part of something else. And I believe what the Lazarus story is telling us is that something else can exist here when we have this dynamic relationship that completes us in God. And Jesus had that. There were no boundaries, no filters. He simply was both human and divine without separation. And Lazarus was one of his best friends. His depth of sorrow is seen throughout the story, and his desire and will to bring this friend back into life to care for Mary and Martha, because they would have been impoverished without Lazarus, is integral to the connection that brings Lazarus back into the world story. But I want to look at this story from the context of what we're experiencing during this time. I was just listening to somebody who had been in prison for 22 years in solitary and was eventually released as and exonerated, talk about what he did during his 22 years and how various ways of living out his days encouraged neural growth into a place of peace and a relationship with a more divine self, and that by taking this time that we are now in to solidify that relationship with deep self and deep God self, and by practicing ways that remind us of the benevolence and the community at large, the natural world, the giving world, the kind world, the communal world, we will actually create a healing in our synaptic pathways that will allow us to be able to cope with this solitude, this isolation, and bring us into deeper relationship with what our soul's journey is actually more about, with what our relationship with God and each other and the natural world is actually trying to teach us, both personally and as a community. So Lazarus spends 4 days in the cave with a big stone in front of it. He spends 4 days in this place, and when Jesus finally arrives and is able to release him, everybody is terrified. They want it, but they're afraid. And when I think about what we are doing in our personal caves, both in our reality now, but also in how we live out our lives in a kind of a cave of consumerism and materialism and greed and wealth, and how we've shut ourselves off from the tenderness of who we are as a species, the remarkability of what our natural world attests to on a daily basis. We have lost that. And I believe Jesus is talking to a community who has lost a lot of faith and who have suffered, who have been oppressed, who have been conquered by the entitled. Not so different from many of us all over the world, some certainly more than others. But we as North Americans have given into that entitlement in many, many ways, and have forgotten how to live simply and naturally and without a lot of things that we just do not need. And this is a time where we can rediscover the more tribal, spiritual, wild yet ordered part of our beings. And I believe this story speaks dramatically to what it means to come out from behind the darkness of a cave of injustice and desensitivity and lack of connection, and have the stone rolled away and move into the light and be blinded at first, but then to recognize that that is the actual truth. And this is something we can do on a daily basis. We can do it weekly. We can do it monthly. We can certainly do it now. We can certainly address that we are indeed in our own caves, and we can utilize this opportunity to both be conscious of what's going on around our world, and also how we ourselves are changing, and allow that transformation to be coming from a natural place, a inherent place. And we do this through prayer and through meditation, through connecting to our animals, the natural world, by laughing and singing, by inputting things that restore us and not overwhelming us with the immensity of pain that's happening. Being aware is one thing, but inundating will disrupt your natural ability to come into your true self. For whatever reasons this is happening to our world, it is happening. And whether there is providence or not, this is an opportunity for all of us to be a presence of gentleness, of peace, of listening, and of authenticity. I myself have noticed my own changes. I've been isolated for 2 weeks. The only way I go out is if I walk my dogs, and it's usually at night, and it's very quiet. Other than that, I have gone nowhere. And I've noticed that my sleep patterns are changing. My heart is changing. My core is becoming more of what I believe I was born to be. And it is both surprising me and affirming me. And I am not without heavy-hearted grief and tears that do not stop, because that's a part of it. And when Lazarus comes out and Mary and Martha and their community are there, they are astounded. They are brought to their knees in gratefulness. When we take the time to be in the cave, let what is happening to us happen. Be in relationship with that and comfort it and listen to it and allow it to speak from our heart and those places inside us that we can't quite unpack. When we come out from there, we come out with an embrace for our world. We come out as beacons. We can let the world know that as hard as this is, beyond scope, that there is a sliver of light that can come out of it if we are changed into our greater good because of it. I know we can do this, folks. And I know there are days when we don't necessarily want to get out of bed or even look at the news, and there are days we should do that. But the day will come when the stone will be rolled away and we will go out into the light and we will see it differently. We will experience everything differently. And if only a few of us do that, that is the trajectory our planet wants to be on, is on, and is with God in all of that. So we can give God a hand by letting God know that we get it, we're here, we're listening, we want you to stir us and take us to where we can be as more enlightened, genuine, compassionate people who can change the world in a way that we can only imagine at this time. But let's always imagine. Namaste.